Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride, and joining us tonight in a slightly different setup than usual, we have Sam Payton in the studio. Sam, how are you?
I'm fine, Kenny. How are you?
I'm not bad. And moving from a leftist position, as he normally is, to a centrist position here on the show tonight, we have Chris McCusker. Chris, how are you?
Kenny, you know that when I get back into that studio, there is going to be hell to be paid for that comment.
I know, but you're far enough away just now that I thought I'd throw it in anyway and get away with it. How are you anyway, Chris?
That's an absolute wido.
Anyway, we start as always. I should point out, by the way, that Sam did have to be in the studio today. She was in dropping some stuff off. And we are more than 2 meters apart. We're not directly facing each other either, so we should be as safe as we possibly can be. But we carry on anyway. As always, we start with our coronavirus statistics update. And as of 2 p.m. today in Scotland, there have been a total of 128,495 coronavirus tests concluded. Of these, 112,842 were confirmed negative and 15,653 tests were positive. Last night, there were 641 people in hospital, 51 of whom were in intensive care, with another 6 with suspected COVID-19 in intensive care. That's an increase now of 14 confirmed new cases since yesterday. And the number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection has sadly risen to 2,422. That number only includes those who died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. These 7 deaths since yesterday are the first coronavirus deaths in Scotland in the past 3 days. And the latest UK daily figures available show that 40,883 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have now sadly died from their illness, an increase of 286. And that number does refer to deaths in all settings, not just those in hospitals. And as it's Tuesday, we also have the weekly analysis by the Office of National Statistics for week 22 of the year, which is the week ending 29th of May. In week 22 in England and Wales, there were 1,822 deaths involving COVID-19, which was 18.5% of all deaths in that week. This was the lowest number of coronavirus-related deaths in the past 8 weeks, but still accounted, as I said, for 18.5% of all deaths. Total excess mortality for the week was 1,653. This difference is explained by slight reductions in the average numbers of other causes of deaths. This takes the total of COVID-19 related deaths in England by the end of week 22 to 44,110, as compared to the daily tally at the 29th of May of 34,636, a difference of almost 10,000. And our first big story today, Scotland's Chief Medical Officer has said there is no evidence of a wider coronavirus outbreak linked to the Nike conference which took place in Edinburgh in February. It emerged last month that one of the 70 Nike employees who attended the conference on February 26th and 27th had the virus and infected 8 delegates who lived in Scotland. The first COVID-19 case in Scotland was not made public until the 1st of March. Labour and Tory MPs and MSPs criticised the Scottish Government after the BBC revealed the incident, with Shadow Scottish Secretary Ian Murray repeatedly calling the conference the ground zero of the nation's coronavirus outbreak. Nicola Sturgeon has consistently dismissed any claims of a cover-up, and today CMO Gregor Smith said that there is no evidence that the conference caused any wider COVID-19 outbreak. Speaking at today's daily briefing, Smith said this particular sublineage of the virus has not been detected in Scotland since towards the end of March. This suggests that the actions taken to manage this outbreak were successful in containing the spread and have led to the eradication of this particular viral lineage, with no evidence of any wider outbreak associated with it in Scotland since that time. And Sam, coming to you first. This is weird having you in the studio.
It's weird, isn't it?
I feel very, very strange now. But this story, I mean, it always seemed a wee bit like the Labour and Tory parties were both looking for something to pin on the Scottish Government. And it does appear now that using this method of tracking slight variations, slight mutations in the virus, they can track the fact that up to this point there was some transmission, but then those lines ended. What did you make of the CMO's announcement today?
It's quite weird being here, isn't it? I know I'm not used to sitting in my dining room with my comfy chair and my big cushions. No, it was quite interesting because as we kind of find out more about the virus, they can check the kind of DNA. I don't know if that's the proper phrase, but I'm going to use that because the DNA of the virus, so they can check to where, you know, different kind of strains and things, as you say, the lineage. And I mean, I'm not a scientist, and I don't claim to be any sort of scientist, but just my understanding of the incubation period of the virus, you know, if the Nike conference was at the end of February, the first case was the 1st of March, the incubation period's not there to say that these two are connected. Yeah. So how can they turn around and say that's ground zero? That's just politicians just looking for a stick to batter, you know, the Scottish government. And not to say that, you know, they have made mistakes and they have said that this is things that will be looked into another day. But what annoys me is the Tory politicians and the Labour politicians they keep going on about this Nike conference and things. Why are they not criticising what the UK advice is coming out and what the UK advice has been from day one?
Yeah.
You know, if they're that concerned about public health, why are they not doing that?
Yeah. And Chris, what did you make of this? The fact that the Scottish Government is using this quite sophisticated method of tracking the progress of the virus. I believe this is involving Glasgow University, who have this very sophisticated method of databasing viral outbreaks. What did you make of that in particular?
Well, I mean, that the CMO went to great lengths and was augmented by the First Minister, is the fact that the Scottish scientists within the universities are making a massive contribution, not just to Scotland, but, you know, around the world in their research. And this is highlighting, you know, I think wonderfully, you know, how great our universities are in R&D. So, but I mean, I don't know. Please tell me who the actual journalist was that posed the question, because the CMO handed his backside on a plate when he turned round deadpan and said, "No, it's got nothing to do with it at all. Move on."
Yeah, it wasn't actually a question. It was just him making his statement at the beginning of the thing. But yeah, there had been a lot of questions about this up to now, obviously, and it's good to see just the science coming to the fore, I think, and the politics maybe taking a back seat. But we move on now. And the antiviral drug remdesivir prevented lung disease in macaque monkeys infected with the new coronavirus, according to a study published in the medical journal Nature today. Remdesivir is the first drug to demonstrate noticeable effectiveness in treating COVID-19 in human trials, but studies are ongoing to determine both its effects and its safety. In the study, 12 macaque monkeys were deliberately infected with the new coronavirus, and half of them were given early treatment with remdesivir. The monkeys receiving the remdesivir did not show signs of respiratory disease and had less lung damage than the control group. Details from the trial were released by the US National Institutes of Health in April, but those findings had not been peer-reviewed, a crucial step in validating the findings of any scientific research. The authors of the study have suggested that remdesivir should be considered as a treatment as early as possible to prevent progression to pneumonia in COVID-19 patients. And Chris, you know, this obviously, it's still early days, and this was obviously quite a small trial, but it does seem to have been positive enough that some countries are already saying that if there is a serious case, a case where life might be in danger, then remdesivir can be used. What do you make of this? Is this the breakthrough we've all been waiting for?
Well, it could well be, but again, I'll go back to what I was saying earlier on about the R&D being done in the Scottish universities and largely, an extent, the English, Welsh universities and universities around the world. Uh, I've got a deep aversion to animal testing of any kind, but I do realise that in some cases it's necessary. I just hope that it was done practically and humanely. I hope that there was no adverse effects on the animals used. But again, it's early days, and I think any talk of a kind of like a golden bullet or a miracle cure, I think that could possibly create a false dawn, and I wouldn't like that kind of chat to be introduced into the UK government, where they're just looking for any excuse for a false dawn, and to restart the corporate mouse wheel, shall we say? The hamster wheel of corporate finance. I caught a small bit of the UK COVID briefing today, and my God, the way that one journalist was pressing them into restarting the economy tomorrow, and he was basically pointing to anything positive, so that they could get the shops open, get the pubs open, and and all the rest of it, and I just wince. I really, really wince at all these people who would much rather put profit before life.
Yeah. Sam, obviously, yeah. I mean, I don't think anybody particularly enjoys the fact that we have animal trials for anything. It's not the nicest thing in the world, but this does potentially offer some hope, doesn't it?
Yeah, with Chris on this, I don't agree with animal testing, and I find it quite difficult, but at the same time, I can understand why it's getting done. I may not agree with it. And it's very much at the moment going against the kind of grain of my ethics and things like that at the moment. I think this is when you kind of start to kind of realise, during a pandemic, you kind of rethink priorities and things. And so I can understand why they're doing it. I agree with Chris in the sense that I hope it's been done as humanely as possible. And yeah, I think we'd be quite naive and if we thought that they were going to be able to get some sort of vaccination or medication for the virus without doing some sort of animal testing. And, as somebody that is against animal testing, it's quite hard to bear right now. It's a kind of bitter pill to swallow. But yeah, I guess we'll just need to see how it progresses and hope that any animal testing, it's just, it's one of those ones you don't want to kind of think about. It's because, we could want to be moving away from animal testing and things like that. We want a society that's moving away a bit more humane and things like that. So, I guess we're going to have to watch this space and see what happens.
Absolutely. On a very different note, Britain will tomorrow mark 2 months in a row without using any electricity from coal-fired power stations for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, the National Grid announced today. The world's first coal-fuelled power plant was built at Holborn Viaduct in London in the 1880s, and coal was the dominant source of electricity generation for more than a century afterwards. However, coal plants emit almost double the amount of carbon dioxide as gas-fired power plants, and increasing concerns about global climate change have spurred accelerating change in power generation since the late 90s. The UK plans to close all coal plants by 2024 as part of efforts to reach its net zero emissions goal by 2050. And this plan is significantly helped by the enormous contribution of renewable generation and more aggressive carbon reduction targets in Scotland. Low power prices and weak industrial demand due to measures to contain the coronavirus, as well as levies on carbon emissions, have made it increasingly unprofitable to run coal plants. Use of renewable power, such as wind and solar, has also soared over the lockdown period, helped by lower running costs than fossil fuel producers and favourable weather conditions. May saw the greenest ever month for electricity production in Britain, with the lowest average carbon intensity on record of 143 grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour, the National Grid said. Carbon intensity is a measure of how much carbon dioxide is emitted for each unit of electricity produced. And before we talk about this, just a wee reminder, if you want to join the conversation, you can do that. You can follow us on Twitter at BroadcastScot and join the conversation using the hashtag Scotland@7. We'd love to hear from you. But Sam, this is quite good news, isn't it?
It just goes to show that it can be done.
Yeah.
You know, and one of the kind of positive things coming out of lockdown, and why wait to get all the kind of coal stations decommissioned? Why don't they start doing it now? But I believe that a part of that is helped with a lot of the renewable energy that comes from Scotland as well. But yeah, it's good news, and long may it last.
Yeah, and Chris, as we said, there's a lot of renewable energy production. There have been several days in Scotland where we've used no carbon emitting electricity production at all. We've managed to get everything from wind and hydro and a wee bit of solar. But this is quite a positive step, isn't it? 2 full months to come tomorrow of no coal-fired production at all.
It's a great step, but there's, you'll understand this more than anyone, Kenny. When I say being an old Bennite, I always look on the coal industry with a bit of fondness. That was when Labour actually meant something. When it used to organise strikes, and it used to stand up for workers' rights and terms and conditions and health and safety, and now as we see the coal industry finally going out the window, we can only look forward to watching UK Labour going out the window as well. So I mean, they don't. I this is a personal opinion. They don't favour. They talk a good deal, a good game when it comes to renewable energy, but what they have to start talking about is that just transition from the old fossil fuels into the more greener renewable energy. And when I talk about just transition, I'm talking about trying to replace all those jobs that have been lost in the coal industry, predominantly due to Thatcher's heinous, scathing attacks on on coal workers in general, but not even to mention as well Arthur Scargill. But it's okay, we've lost those jobs, but we still need energy, we still need electricity, we still need fuel of some kind of commodity in order to heat us and charge our homes and whatnot, and what have you. So let's replace those jobs with greener jobs, and build that industry the same way that we built the coal industry. Because at one time, the coal industry was one of the biggest industries in the world. It just so happened that the fact that the British Isles were rich in its coal exploration, and actually, it basically shored up the pretty much the whole of the UK economy between you know, as you say, the late 1800s right up until, what, 1970?
Yeah.
So, you know, there's part of me is really happy about it, and part of me kind of laments all those comrades who went down the mines and actually risked their life, you know, for the
Yeah.
good of the empire, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and of course there are many of those coal towns that still haven't recovered, like 40 years on. It's yeah, I do understand that, and we just have to hope, as you say, that there is a lot of work put into some sort of just transition. But we do move on now. And an expert advisory board is to be established to drive progress towards a fairer, more equal Scotland in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. The group will listen to and learn from people with lived experience of poverty and inequality, and membership will draw on expertise from equality and disabled people's organisations, housing and homelessness bodies, town centre and regeneration groups, and anti-poverty campaigners. The group will be jointly chaired by Communities Secretary Aileen Campbell and Social Security Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville. Members will include Emma Rich of Engender, John Sparks of Crisis, and the Scottish Refugee Council's Sabir Zazai. Now, come to you first on this one, Sam. Now, this is something that comes just very hot on the heels of announcements the other week about the SNP's Social Justice Commission. Now, obviously, that's a party body. This is a Scottish government body, but you would have to think they're going to be kind of doing quite a lot of overlapping work, aren't they?
You would imagine they would be doing quite a lot of overlapping work, and I hope they're going to work together, because there will be overlaps. This is something that's badly needed, and they need to be talking to people who have living experiences to make Scotland a lot more equal and fairer. So it'll be interesting to see how it's going to go. And yeah, wait and see what happens. This is going to be my catchphrase tonight. That's it. Because I'm out of sorts. I've been back in the studio. Brain's going dead. But yeah, it'll be good to see what happens with it.
And Chris, this will be music to your ears, that the lived experience of people who are living in poverty, living with refugees, people with disabilities, women's organisations, all being at the forefront of this consultation.
Yeah, and what the Scottish Government have to do, and I'll make no bones about this, they have to listen to the internal bodies within the SNP and the Greens and any other pro-Indie party, because this is a body of work that will help shape Scotland going forward in an independent Scotland. I personally would like to see an independent Republic of Scotland, but that's neither here nor there. But they have to listen to the grassroots. There is no point in listening to a bunch of stuffed suits around the table giving their opinions and them recalling, oh yes, I was told by such and such about this and that. They have to listen from the people who are actually on the ground, who are going through this, who are suffering at the hands of, austerity, homelessness, having to rely on food banks. We're coming into a new school year where we see that kids are going back to school. Sam will know all about this, but people who can't even afford to get a school uniform for their children to start school. The whole stigma, I remember that even back in the 70s when I was at school, and the complete mince that get taken out of you if you weren't dressed like everyone else. Do you know what I mean? If your shirt was the wrong colour, or your blazer was an off black colour and stuff like that, or your socks didn't match. It is horrendous, and it impacts on children going forward for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
So they have to listen to people who have gone through all this and take on board. And more importantly than that, just taking on board isn't enough. It's actually acting on it as well. I mean, there are times that the SNP government have just basically paid lip service to some of these groups when they've raised their concerns, and they have been able to pap it off with, well, we're not in charge and all the rest of it. We have to frame it around, but this is what we could do if we are independent. This is what we could achieve for people who are struggling, and this is how we want to change it. And we will set out that framework, and that will then give the people the confidence to back the government and back the pro-Indy parties, such as the Greens and the SNP and, any other that comes along, and say, yes, we want Scotland to be an independent country, so let's get these things done.
Yeah. As you say, it's very much like the Poverty Truth Commission said, nothing about us without us is for us. People have to be involved in that consultation. We will obviously keep watching to see how that progresses. But moving on, a somewhat similar story. A new expert group will work with the Scottish Government to provide a clearer picture of the impact on minority ethnic communities of the coronavirus. Following indications that minority ethnic communities may face higher risks from COVID-19, the group will consider evidence and data being gathered by the Scottish Government, Public Health Scotland, National Records of Scotland and the NHS, and advise on policy actions to mitigate any disproportionate effects. As part of its immediate response to the pandemic, the Scottish Government has provided more than £500,000 to organisations working specifically with minority ethnic communities across Scotland. Equalities Minister Christina McKelvey said, "The Scottish Government is deeply concerned by reports that suggest people from ethnic minorities have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19, both in terms of health and wider social and economic impacts. Although the current analysis in Scotland appears to show that there is not a higher level of COVID-19 cases than would be expected, I understand that many people will be anxious about protecting themselves and their families. I want to reassure them that we are taking this issue extremely seriously. We are working to better understand the data on how the pandemic is impacting on our minority ethnic communities in Scotland so we can take the appropriate action, and this new group will use their expertise to challenge, inform and shape future work." And Scottish Green co-leader Patrick Harvey has welcomed this announcement, saying, "I commend the STUC Black Workers Committee, whose letter I highlighted at FMQs last week, for drawing attention to the importance of adequately assessing the impact of COVID-19 on Scotland's BAME communities. While I welcome the First Minister's commitment to establishing this expert group, I am concerned that it seems only limited analysis has been undertaken to date, and I urge the Scottish Government to ensure that the group has all the resources it needs to undertake the analysis required as quickly as possible." And Chris, coming to you there, I know your ears will have pricked up at the mention of the STUC Black Workers Committee, but this is something that we've heard a lot about, the impact of the COVID-19 on especially black people, both in England and in the US. It doesn't seem to have had quite the same impact in Scotland, which may be just an artefact of the fact that we have smaller minority groups here in Scotland. But what do you make of this announcement that there's going to be some proper work put into analysing it?
Well, for a start off, it's a bit of sadness, the fact that it's taken to now for the STUC BAME activists to actually get a bit of recognition, because they do a fantastic body of work. And and I'm not just talking about in the last 6 months. They were at the forefront of the campaign for Sheikh Bio, and the fact that the Scottish Government is finally going to start engaging with them in order to not rectify any mistakes, but counter any mistakes going forward. And what they have said that they want to see, and this is highly achievable. And especially when we've got 2021 coming up, the Scottish elections, is the fact that there should be more BAME candidates put up for selection for MSP, and that doesn't just go down to the SNP. I would include the Greens in that as well. And so Patrick Harvey, providing warm words, again, is all fair and well. But I would really like to see an uptake of the amount of candidates. Not necessarily am I calling for more black MSPs, because obviously those candidates have to be good enough in order to be MSPs.
Yeah.
But
there must surely be enough good black candidates out there, in the somewhere.
And I can point to one straight away. I can point to my comrade Graham Campbell. Graham has done a powerful amount of work, in the BAME committees and groups, and the way that he organises the activists and raising the awareness of the BAME issues, as well as highlighting issues of regarding the slave trade. It does that fantastically well with Sir Jeff Palmer of Edinburgh University. I think it's Heriot Watt that he's at. Honestly, the whole Flag Up Jamaica campaign and stuff like that, to highlight Scotland's part within the slave trade, has they've been doing brilliant work long before statues were thrown into the quayside in Bristol and stuff like that. Graham done a whole series with David Heyman, talking about these issues and stuff like that. But again, going back to the fact that that the S2UC are open to working with the Scottish government. I have to use this wee tie-in as the fact that, again, it trips up Scottish Labour, and they're constantly saying that the Scottish government do not engage with the unions. Well, I'm sorry, the S2UC is the union body within Scotland, so therefore they are engaging with the unions, and we do it regularly, in the government and out with the government, with the trade union group and the S2UC. So, obviously, I'm absolutely delighted at the news that it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we move on now, and the SNP has ramped up pressure on the UK government to urgently introduce a comprehensive financial package and strengthen welfare protections after a new report revealed that households across the UK face racking up £6 billion in debt due to the coronavirus pandemic. Step Change, the debt advice charity, warned in its study that each affected adult across the UK will have accumulated an extra £1,076 of arrears and £997 of debt on average due to the health crisis, with 4.6 million households across the UK impacted. Meanwhile, it reported that 1.2 million people have fallen behind on utility bills, over 800,000 people on council tax, and 590,000 on rent. Neil Gray MP, the SNP's Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, said, "The coronavirus pandemic has dealt a devastating blow to the economy, people's jobs and livelihoods, and households across the UK. The findings published by Step Change are a stark warning for the urgent need for the UK government to bring forward a comprehensive financial support package and to strengthen welfare protections, as there are still serious gaps in support that risk leaving people behind." And Sam, this is kind of a terrifying prospect, isn't it, for some people, where people who are on who were on low incomes before the pandemic are now maybe not working and perhaps not eligible for the job retention scheme due to the structure of their work, and now find themselves in really serious debt problems. It's going to be a big job to dig people back out of this, isn't it?
It is. It's quite worrying because it's going to add on to mental health problems as well. So it's going to add on to health problems as well. So it's going to put a kind of strain on a lot of different services, including NHS and all the other debt services as well. The problem is there is so many people who may have been furloughed, but for whatever reason the businesses haven't qualified for the furlough scheme. There's been kind of cases of that, and also as well when the furlough goes down to I think it's 80% now, and then it'll go down to 60%. That's going to put more strain on people as well. People are struggling, people are really struggling right now, and having to make tough choices between which bills they pay and which bills they don't pay. There needs to be something put in place. Do I expect anything of the UK government to be doing something? I don't really think so. I would love them to see them doing something, but I don't really think they will. If it was bankers and stuff, they would be more likely to jump in 2 feet first and offer all the help and support. But for normal everyday people, I really don't see that. And again, I'm going to bring up universal basic income. This would just
it saves me doing it.
Yeah, this would just be one of those ones where this would have been perfect. It gives people a basic income coming in, so they know what they're doing. Because there is people out there who have they are, maybe surviving on tax credits or child benefit and things like that. And one of the things that people may not be aware of is child maintenance payments have been suspended or cut at the moment as well. So people's incomes have been severely affected at the moment. And my fear is with the Tory government, they might turn around and say, well, people can go back to work. And then that's then putting people in the position of, keeping their health protected or go and paying their bills to keep a roof over their head. I could see I hope I'm wrong, but my fear would be the Tory government would turn around and say, well, get everybody back to work then, and, then they've got an income. But we all know universal credit doesn't work either. So even people that have been paid off, and in the long term, even in the immediate future at the moment, we're seeing and hearing of people getting emails off their employers at the moment saying there may be business reconstruction, remodelling, and talking about redundancies and things.
We are going to come to that in just a wee bit. But before that, we do have another economic story. The SNP has said that Scotland and the UK will face economic disaster between the risk of a no deal or hard Brexit and the impact of the coronavirus crisis if the UK government fails to extend the Brexit transition period. Today, the UK government updated MPs on the fourth and final round of Brexit negotiation talks, making it clear that negotiations are in deadlock, particularly around honouring and implementing the Northern Ireland Protocol and reconciling diverging positions on fisheries. Today, Barry Dees, the Chief Executive of the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations, said July looks like a goner for a deal, as the June deadline for a transition extension request approaches. Michel Barnier also said last week that there have been no significant areas of progress, that the UK was continuing to backtrack on its commitments made in the political declaration, and that they don't think we can go on like this forever. The SNP Scottish Government has said that ending the Brexit transition this year could remove £3 billion from the Scottish economy in just 2 years, on top of the impact of the coronavirus. And Chris, I mean, this is something we've been talking about for months on the show, but it's now really getting down to the wire where there needs to be an agreement made within the next 3 weeks, or we are definitely leaving on December 31st and very possibly without any sort of deal.
Yeah, but that's exactly what Michael Gove wants. Michael Gove doesn't want to get a deal. And you and I have discussed this many a time. Going back to last year, that the default position has always been a no deal exit. It then allows the UK government to go into the deals that they've got with Donald Trump, because the British government see them as more of a priority than Europe, and unfortunately, we're going to be dragged. I don't see any last gasp deal being done, or any last gasp meeting to be convened in order to sort this out. And it is going to be the fact that Michael Gove will just run the clock down to the end of June, past that stage where we could apply for a Brexit extension, and then basically coast on into the 31st of December. What I would say then is that, and if this happens, I would strongly, and I'm nobody to advise the SNP parliamentary group in Westminster, and I'm certainly nobody to lecture the First Minister, but I would strongly suggest that if that happens in June, then we have to start making our own representations to the European Union, and we have to take out some sort of arbitration case with the Court of Human Rights, and if it gets messy, tough titties, it's going to get messy. But again, this all ties in with 2021. It ties in with the course of action that the SNP need to take. I had a conversation last night on Twitter with Angus Brendan McNeill, in regards as to what the Scottish Government should do and how they should tackle the 21 election. Mm-hmm. And I believe that they will, on the back of what happens in June, with the Brexit negotiations, the Scottish Government, the SNP, are going to have a grown-up discussion between Plan A and Plan B, as was mooted by Angus Brendan McNeill and my good comrade Chris McElhenney, because it has got to the point where we cannot give them any more chances. And this is the last gasp saloon, and if they fail to take our advice for at least a 2-year extension, then we should just basically, that's it. We should just hold our hands up, say keys, and we should go directly to the European Union.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will obviously keep looking at this story as it moves along. But for now, move on to something that Sam mentioned just a few moments ago. SNP MP Gavin Newlands has today brought forward emergency legislation before Parliament that seeks to prohibit employers from dismissing workers and subsequently re-employing them with diminished terms and conditions. The Employment, Dismissal and Re-employment Bill, which has cross-party support, comes in response to firms, including British Airways, that have sought to lay off and then rehire thousands of staff on significantly reduced terms due to the coronavirus pandemic. The MP warned that the moves were exploitative and would push workers into hardship. Now, Sam, you brought this up as one of the problems that people are facing. What do you make of this from Gavin Newlands?
Yeah, it's welcomed, but we were talking a wee bit about this before the show, and I actually thought this was already something that businesses weren't allowed to do, was to make somebody redundant and then re-employ them with diminished rights. So I was actually quite shocked when you were explaining this to me before the show, that no, there is kind of gaps and loopholes and things. So it needs to be done, because there is businesses out there that are exploiting the COVID at the moment. Yes, understandable, businesses are struggling at the moment, but there's a lot out there who are using this to their advantage to exploit employees, and employees are getting pressurised into signing new contracts and things like that. So I hope that's going to kind of take over the, kind of overlay into people just being forced to sign other contracts, because I know from people I've spoke to, there's a few out there who employers have been turned around and saying to them, can you sign this new contract, blah, 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 to protect your job and things. And they are very much discouraging people to join unions or to go and seek advice. And at the moment, definitely, before anyone signs any new contract, go and seek advice or join, and if you can, join a union, because, not every employer at the moment has got people's best interests at heart. So, this is very much welcomed.
Yeah, just to be clear, I mean, as I didn't realise until I looked into this wee bit, it was something that I had thought was already illegal. Technically, it is illegal to make somebody redundant in order to rehire them with worse terms and conditions, and you could potentially take a tribunal, take them to a tribunal as an unfair dismissal. But in law, it's not actually illegal to dismiss somebody, make their post redundant, and then rehire them on different terms. Chris, as our resident aviation correspondent, somebody who was a trade union rep in the aviation industry, does it surprise you, first of all, that British Airways are trying to take this kind of action?
Nope. Willie Walsh is an unscrupulous operator, and if he was successful in this, it would only give carte blanche to people like Branson and O'Leary to follow suit. And just going back to the whole issue of not thinking that this was entirely legal, I went through this process when I worked for Safeway. If people are of an age where they can remember the Safeway food stores, I was a grocery manager with them, and at the time I was down in London, and I was forced to lose £19,000 off of my salary as they went through a restructuring programme and basically paid off all the department managers, restructured, and then gave new contracts to those department managers by calling them controllers. So basically they changed the job description, not the job. And that allowed them to offer you either, there's the door, or you can take a pay cut of £9,500. 19.5 grand it was down in England. And at that time, it was, I had heard internal rumblings that Safeway, this was a year before Morrison's bought Safeway over. So I had decided to move up to Scotland anyway. So I came back up, and again, I was faced with the same dilemma. But up in Scotland, I was only going to lose 10 grand. So there was nothing I could do. But they had nothing that they could do as well, because them changing the name of, or should I say, the job title, it didn't really help them in an awful lot of ways, because they wanted to do with night crews and all the rest of it, where you actually needed, basically the night crew manager in effect is actually the store manager. He holds the keys. He is in charge of that, £1 million shop. So, again, we took it to the arbitration, and we won. But, again, you had to sit about and you had to wait until a deal was sorted out, and we lost some but gained another, and all the rest of it. But in effect, it actually changed the whole company. And, I didn't like the way that Morrison's were going. So, basically I left Morrison's. But, and saying that now, what Walsh will try and do, if this isn't blocked off, which I seriously think Gavin Newlands will be able to do, because there is such a cross-party consensus, is that Walsh would at least want to put people down to a bare minimum in order to operate his flights. And this is born out of the fact that the aviation industry has taken an 85% reduction in the operation of flights around the world since the onslaught of the pandemic. And it's not going to get any better anytime soon, because there are so many things to consider, in operating an aircraft, amidst a pandemic.
Yeah.
So going forward, passenger occupancy is going to be vastly reduced, and that is obviously going to affect the airfares as well. And they will try and dress it up, no doubt. Dermot O'Leary will he will keep his prices low, but he will charge huge amounts of money for you to take a bag with you.
Yeah.
And put it into the hold and stuff like that and all of this. But he'll try all those wee tricks. But it is going to take a long time for aviation industry to recover on this. And if the aviation industry don't start playing the ball with the government, then they are going to find that people are just going to sort of like go, well, bugger that, I'm just going to jump in my car and take a ferry across to France, and then I can interrail into Spain. It's perfectly reasonable to do.
Yeah. Well, we do move on now to our last story of today, and some fairly good news. The latest weekly A&E waiting times figures were published today and show that for the week ending 31st of May, 95.2% of patients were seen and treated within 4 hours, despite a significant rise in attendances at A&E as Scotland began to emerge from lockdown. Commenting on the figures, Health Secretary Jean Freeman said, "These figures take into account the first weekend of lockdown restrictions being eased and show a 12% rise in attendances. As we move towards carefully and gradually resuming NHS services which were paused as a result of COVID-19, I want to remind people that if you have urgent medical concerns, to contact your GP or NHS 24, who can provide advice and direct you to the most appropriate service. That message is really important. Do not ignore early warning signs of serious conditions. If you have new symptoms, then it's vital you get them checked out." We continue to work closely with health boards and partnerships to ensure the development and implementation of robust local mobilisation plans which aim to strengthen capacity and minimise the impact of COVID-19 across the health system. And Sam, I mean, we did discuss this a wee bit before the show, but this, as numbers of attendances at A&E have gone up, actually performance has improved as well. This is actually a slight increase from the last few weeks in the number of people getting seen within the 4 hour target.
Which is quite good.
Yeah.
It's just a good story. But yeah, and I'm going to say it's good. I don't know if good is the correct terminology to use, so my apologies. But it's good to see that people are starting to go back to using A&E again, and the numbers are going up slightly, and because there was a kind of fear there for a while where people were frightened to go to A&E or minor injuries and things. So and it's very, because I think a lot of people, what they were doing was they were kind of believing that I don't want to go and annoy them, it's something simple, it'll be fine, and it's maybe not been something simple, it's maybe been something a bit more serious. So it's very good to see that people are kind of maybe getting the confidence back to go back to A&E and minor injuries and things like that, and going getting kind of health checkups. So that's a good thing. Yeah. And But one of the things also as well, coming off the back of COVID, is maybe people start to kind of reevaluate how they use A&E and minor injuries and all the different services, and realising, sometimes you can go to a GP or go to a pharmacist or, or an optician or so forth. So this has been from a positive side. People are kind of reassessing how they use the NHS and realise that there is, not always go to A&E, not always go to minor injuries. There is other ways you can go and seek treatment. So see what happens. Hopefully it stays like this and the good news stories, but we'll wait and see.
And Chris, just very quickly, we've only got a couple of minutes. After all the calls for Jean Freeman's head over the last week or so, this is an impressive result for her, isn't it?
It certainly is, and it gives me a couple of minutes to let the viewers know that Jean Freeman wonderfully owned Miles Briggs this afternoon in the Parliament, where he was asking a question about COVID and the rate of infections in hospitals and stuff like that and all the rest of it. And he then went on to mutter from a sedentary position, and she wonderfully just slapped him down and said, "Please do not mutter at me, Mr. Briggs." It was totally owned, completely owned, because she further went on to say it is unrealistic that you could surmise that these are the figures where we don't have the figures. So therefore, if I can't surmise, you should not surmise. So therefore, you should stop muttering. So, absolutely wonderful. Jean Freeman has been excellent in her role. She has been working constantly. I've got a lot of regard for Jean. I done some work with her a couple of years ago, along with my friend Colette Walker. So I've got oodles of confidence in Jean Freeman, and again we go back to one of the earlier stories, and it just highlights the fact that the Tories and the Scottish Labour have got nothing to throw at the Scottish Government, because the Scottish Government have been doing so well in tackling the pandemic, that they have to resort to what the old tried and tested method of grievance politics. And that is all it is. It's just grievance for the sake of grievance. Again, I think Sam actually mentioned the fact that, they seem to point it all in the direction of the Scottish Government and never in the direction of the UK Government. If I'm allowed to go on to a wee further rant,
well, no, Chris.
Fact that
because we're out of time, Chris.
Would much rather. All right.
He's not actually going to listen to you, Kenny.
We'll have you back another time. I promise. You'll get to talk all you want another day. Well, sorry, that is all we've got time for today. We do apologise. This has been a slightly strange show, as Sam and I both said. It's been quite odd, just being in a different seat. Everything feels very odd today. But we want to thank Sam for coming in, and to Chris for coming in by Skype. And we'd like to thank you for joining us as well. The shows wouldn't be worth doing at all if we didn't have an audience for them. So thank you for joining us. We would ask, if you're able to support Broadcasting Scotland, then please do go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register. Sign up there as a supporter, and your contribution can make a big difference to what we're able to do here at Broadcasting Scotland. Budgets are very, very tight just now, so every penny you contribute does genuinely help us just to keep the lights on just now. If you're not able to support us though, then please don't feel bad about it. We've talked a lot tonight about people being on tight incomes just now. But you can still help us out. Please do follow us on Twitter at Broadcast Scot, or just search Broadcasting Scotland on Facebook, find us there, and then share the programmes around. You, our audience, are also our marketing team, so please let people know why you watch Broadcasting Scotland. And just while I mentioned Twitter, I have finally got myself on Twitter. You can find me at Kenny McBride77. And a wee bit later on tonight, I'm going to find the show that I did with Graham Campbell a few months ago, talking about the moves that the Glasgow University has made towards reparations for its part in the slave trade, the amount of money that came to the university through the slave trade. It was a really fascinating show, really moving. I learned a huge amount. Graham Campbell, as Chris said earlier, he's a fount of knowledge and a really powerful campaigner as well. That show was one of the most interesting shows I think we've ever done on Broadcasting Scotland. So I'll tweet that out later. If you promise to follow me, you can find it that way. And finally, if you want to get involved here at Broadcasting Scotland, we say this all the time, but there's lots of work to be done here, and every hour you can contribute to helping out here would make a huge difference to what we're able to do. Everything here is done by a skeleton crew, and we need all the help we can get. So if you're interested at all in building up Scottish broadcasting, then please do get in touch with us. Let us know what you can do, what you want to do, what you want to learn, what skills you've already got that you want to contribute. It's all valuable, and it's all something that we want to use. So that's all we've got time for. So once again, thanks to Sam Payton and Chris McCusker for joining us. Thank you again for joining us. I'll be back again tomorrow at 7, but until then, have a great evening. Good night.